You've got ideas, you've got ambition, you've got no time, or so you think. I'm Marissa Lonick, and I help busy moms with big dreams and no time. Join me each week as I dive into time management strategies, goal setting and achieving framework, and inspiring guests who are juggling mom life, work life, fill in the blank life. Dreams don't work unless you do, and just because you're a mom doesn't mean you can't still make it happen, whatever it means to you. Welcome to the Mama Work It podcast. Hello, mama friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Mama Work It podcast. If you are a mom who is currently expecting on maternity leave, return to work before, after having a baby, or planning to do so, this episode is for you. I'm here today with the amazing Lori Mihalich-Levin, CEO and founder of Mindful Return, author of Back to Work After Baby, How to Plan and Navigate a Mindful Return from Maternity Leave, and co-host of the Parents at Work podcast. Lori is the expert in all things return to work for moms, and I am just so grateful she is here today to share her wisdom, her tips with all our listeners. Besides all this, she is a mama to two wonderful red-headed boys and is a healthcare lawyer in private practice. Her thought leadership has been featured in publications including Forbes, The Washington Post, New York Times Parenting, Thrive Global, and The Huffington Post. Lori, thank you so much for being here.
Marissa, it's such a pleasure to be here with you. Thanks for having me on, Mama Friend.
Yes. All right. Well, first things first, tell us more about you and your story. How did you become the return to work woman who has been able to support thousands of other working parents successfully do the same?
By diving into a big pond of my own disaster that was the return to work after parental leave, I think. I went back to work full time after baby number one and found it challenging. And then baby number two came along 2 years later. And my husband and I like to joke that 1 + 1 felt like 85. I was not sleeping. Things were really ugly. And I looked around for resources to support me. And all I could find were snarky blog posts that said things like, you might leak on your shirt, or don't put your baby photo on your desk, or your colleagues won't take you seriously. And I was like, this is not helpful. I found all sorts of very thoughtful and helpful courses and pieces of advice around the baby. And that's great. We all need help with the baby, but we also need help with ourselves. So I basically set out to create what I wished had existed for myself, both in providing thoughtful and structured information about how to make the return, and also connect new parents to one another so that they can be in community and not be feeling isolated and crying alone on the kitchen floor like I did all the time as a new parent.
Yeah. Yes. Very, very relatable. Absolutely. Did you feel like when you were going through that, did you feel like you were the only one, or did you have a community at that time, or friends even, to kind of vent to or chat with about those challenges?
Yeah, that's a good question. I had a couple of friends who had parental leaves at the same time as I did. And so while we were, we would take our babies to the nursing lounge at the mall together, or I remember we went to get their baby feet painted at a pottery store or whatever, but that was sort of once or twice, not a real solid community. And once I went back to work, we all went back to work, and we were feeling as though, we didn't have at least each other anymore. I also had my babies in the winter, which I think probably promoted a bit more of an inward looking parental leave. And I felt like there must be other people struggling with the same thing, but I didn't really have the energy to go find them. And when I went back to work, and, throughout that first year and even second year, moms from my office would come into my office and shut the door and burst into tears and tell me, oh my gosh, this is such a hard transition, and I didn't know it would be like this. And that's really what sparked the idea that I'm really not alone in this thing. And what would be one way to bring working parents together in a forum where they could commiserate?
Yeah, I agree. I think, during that maternity leave, if we're fortunate to find some friends kind of in the same season, it's great to kind of get together and do some fun things, when you can, because the days are challenging in itself, right? It's not a vacation. But then when you go back to work, it does kind of feel like, where's even the the energy and the time to be able to find that community. So I love that you've been able to create this resource for people in that stage. I think it's so important.
Thank you. Well, after I had my second child, and I was definitely in a dark place. I suspect I had some undiagnosed postpartum anxiety. I found this resource online that was at the time called the Abundant Mama Project, and it was run by this woman named Shawn Fink. And she ran this program with moms all over the world. I think there might have been about 100 moms in my cohort. And they weren't all necessarily quote unquote working moms, although of course we all work. And their kids were of all different ages and stages. But we were all trying to find the abundance in life instead of the overwhelm. And it was so reassuring to me to hear echoed in these other people's comments throughout the course, things that were going through my head that I thought were just like my own crazy thoughts. And in fact, everyone was struggling to get the Cheerios off the floor and trying to remember that it's a blessing that we have the Cheerios and, feeling grateful for that. And so when I was part of that community and felt so lifted up, and I feel like that really changed the trajectory of my own mental health at that particular juncture, that's when I realized that it would be super helpful to bring people together who are all in that return to work phase and sort of help them connect, because I received so much relief from being part of even an online cohort of people I didn't, know personally.
Right. Yeah. So what are some strategies new parents can use to make that return to work after parental leave a smoother one?
Good question. In Mindful Return Land, we like to work through 4 different themes. And the courses that we offer are structured, along these 4 themes. And I think, at least for myself, in like the big, muddled, crazy world of post-baby life, it's nice to have buckets and be able to like arrange something in a neat order. So if I may, I'm just going to walk through the 4 buckets, the 4 themes,
Absolutely.
4 categories, and maybe choose one tip for each category. There are, 1,000 tips in each category, but let's just choose one. So the first theme is a mindful mindset for going back to work. This is like the how not to go off the rails in your own brain when you're going back. And for me, I found that micro mindfulness strategies were really the way to go, because I didn't have much time, and still I wanted to be able to breathe and pause and like be present for a moment rather than always running to the next thing. So the tip and strategy there is to, figure out what works for you. But for me, it was coupling/multitasking my shower with my mindfulness practice. And I came up with this acronym that I still use in the shower every morning, ISS, which is a form of to be. The I stands for set an intention for my day. The intention might be go to bed earlier tonight, or pick a time, go to bed at 9, even if the dishes are full of whatever, because you're exhausted and you were up half the night last night. Or the intention might be get that one work project done because it's been hanging over you, whatever that is. Set the intention. Then the first S stands for stretch, a couple of simple yoga poses. And the next S stands for savor. Savor this moment when you have hot water, no child is attached to any part of your body, and you have like a moment of peace. So, find a spot during your day for that micro mindfulness. The second category is logistics. And we have a million tips on logistics, right? It could be don't go back to work on Monday, pick a different day of the week, or try to phase into childcare and phase into work if possible. One thing that I really recommend that was counterintuitive to me was to, if possible, phase into childcare the week before you phase into work. And for me, that allowed me to, and I know this isn't always possible depending on people's schedules and whatever. And initially I thought, but then I'm depriving myself of, this extra week with my baby. But no, it really helped me get my head in a better place. I did the drop off and pick up the first time where I could drop him off, come home, burst into tears, be like, okay, I'm going to pump. And then I went back and picked him up because it was just a 2-hour stint. I got to see friends. I went for a haircut. I found clothes I could wear. It helped me feel normal to do that ramp up in advance. Third bucket, leadership. We tend to think about parenthood as a detriment to our career. Suddenly, we're just not going to be able to do X, Y, or Z that we thought we were going to be able to do. I love to turn that notion on its head and flip it around and say, and I truly believe this very deeply, that parenthood is giving you leadership skills that are going to make you amazing at your career that you probably didn't even know you were going to gain. And so let's focus on those and talk about how we can shout those skills from the rooftop. So, if you're listening to this right now, sit down and think about, even pick up a pen and write down 1 or 2 things that you're getting better at because you're a parent. I mean, it can be anything from efficiency, prioritization, empathy, the ability to meet the needs of demanding clients who can't articulate their needs very well. I mean, that happens every day. There are any number of skills. So let's have that narrative be the one we walk back into the office with. Finally, and I know this was a very long-winded answer, Marissa, so thank you for your patience. Category number 4 is community. This is the find your people, right? To the extent there is a working parent group at your office, go find out who runs it and go to some of their activities and events. If you don't have that, even if you do have that, find a person who's been through the return process and have lunch with them, or a virtual lunch or a virtual coffee. If you're not back in the office yet, that very first day or very first week that you're going back, that person will know what you're going through and they'll be able to commiserate and, try to find your people. I have a friend who likes to say that the playground is the new golf course. So finding your people is not only helpful for your sanity, mental health, and friendships, but it's also helpful for business. I have gotten business out of attending parent group meetings at my workplace. So I'll pause there. That was, a little tiny tip in each of the 4 categories.
That was amazing. That was amazing. Yeah, I love how practical the tips are. I love how they touch on, 4 very different areas. I think we're all always, when we do that return to work, I've done it 3 times, you are focused a lot just kind of on the logistics or on just like how you're going to make the hours, the drop-offs, like all of it work. But I mean, you need to really be thinking about all these different areas, because when you're not in a good mental space, what happens? You get to work, you're not productive, you're not efficient, you can't get the work done, as quickly as you'd like to be able to run out the door at 5 p.m. to then be with your baby again. So it makes absolute sense that you would be touching upon all those different areas.
Yeah. And if I can offer just sort of like one holistic overall piece of advice, it's to view the return as a process and not as an event. And I think that's true both for those people who are returning to offices post-COVID and people who are returning to work virtually or in person after a paternity or maternity leave. Because, one of the problems for me was that my expectation was that after a day or a week, I would be back in the saddle and everything would be normal and whatever. And gosh, if it wasn't a whole year until I sort of felt, quote unquote, like myself again.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also feel like it's not going to go back to normal pre-baby because you have a new normal now.
Yes,
right?
Exactly. Yes. There's no back. It's just a settling into something else. Exactly.
Right. Okay. Now let's talk a little bit about employers. What do you think employers can do to support their new parent talent in this transition?
Oh, Marissa, I love employers, and we work with a lot of employers, and I think employers matter so much in this transition because, there's the old adage, people don't leave businesses or companies, they leave people. And yes. I think that's even more true in this environment. The number one reason that working parents say that they leave is because they didn't feel supported by their manager. So one thing employers can do is to train their managers on how to manage people who are going out on parental leave. That's, one thing that Mindful Return works on, but I think there's a lot of education that can happen there. I think from a philosophical, fundamental basis, employers need to say to new parents, I believe in you. I know you're going to be fine. You're going to be great. We appreciate your talents. We want you to come back and we'll figure this out together, right? There's a certain element of flexibility that needs to be there. I think viewing having a child and working and coming back as all part of the normal human experience can be very helpful. There are specific policies, of course, that employers can adopt. I often get on a soapbox about eliminating the primary and secondary caregiver distinctions within parental leave policies. Employers can do a lot by having a leave policy, of course, one that is paid for, and 2, that is gender neutral and doesn't try to separate out who is, quote unquote, the primary caregiver versus non-primary. I think primary and secondary distinctions, first of all, just don't work in today's society and norms. Like, my husband's primary for this hour and then I'll be primary for the next hour. And second, it sort of sets you up as an employer to then have to sort of define for yourself and monitor. And are you going to count the number of diapers that one versus the other of the partners is going to be, changing? you probably don't want that responsibility. And it's usually the mom who winds up being quote unquote primary. So let's get rid of that distinction. Another thing employers can do, I mean, they can always offer resources and tools like the Mindful Return program to help their new employees, new parent employees return and to signal that they care about them. And then I was going to say another important thing employers can do, and I alluded to this in the community piece, is to support working parent and caregiver employee resource groups and affinity groups within their organizations. 10 years ago, I hadn't heard of a working parent group really within an organization, and now they're everywhere. I lead and convene a group of the leaders of working parent groups called the Working Parent Group Network. And right now we have over 215 people in the group from federal government and nonprofit and for-profit and all different types of employers. So I know that there's been a groundswell over the past 5 to 7 years of these groups within organizations that are helping parents and caregivers find one another. And employers can provide resources for that. They can provide admin support. They can provide some FTE time to the people who are running them. They can provide bonuses. I know LinkedIn gives their ERG leaders a bonus every year. It's something that the employer can do to signal and say, this isn't a volunteer activity. This is actually part of our company culture, because it does help the employees to feel more connected to each other. And as I said before, business development opportunities come from those gatherings as well. I could go on, but those are a few of ramp up and ramp down policies without changing pay, flexibility policies. We could go on, but those are a handful of things employers can do.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think underlying all of those, really, it comes down to a culture shift. Right. Yes. It comes down to a real cultural shift and understanding from the top down, training those managers to be more empathetic, understanding. I love how you put that, where I had chills actually when you said it, when it was, I can't obviously think of the exact language you said, but it was something along the lines of real encouragement when you come back, we're going to figure this out. Mm-hmm. It's going to be not oh, it's so exciting. Congratulations. You had the baby. Okay. Here's all the work I need you to also get done. Right. There's just a real partnership there. And I think that can be missing from a lot of companies. I agree.
Yeah. I'm working with this one organization that's working to develop a conversation guide for the new parent employee, and then a parallel conversation guide for the managers, the partners of the law firm. And, it then sets up the expectation that there will be conversations around these 7 topics that are all, relevant to new parents. And I just love that sort of idea, because right now, as you're suggesting, people come back and it's just okay, we won't talk about any of this stuff. No. If we signal that this stuff needs to be talked about and we help people know what categories they should be discussing on a regular basis, I think companies can help sort of provide that structure and then encourage the dialogue. So it's not this taboo topic about whether or not the employee will travel after they have the baby or whatever. No, we're all just talking about it, and we're not making assumptions about what people do or don't want.
Right. Yeah. All right. Well, what about if someone's listening right now? Maybe they've got that big red circle on a date on their calendar of the day they're going back. It's fast approaching. They're feeling really nervous, anxious about it. What's one piece of advice you could give that person?
Okay. I can't just give one. But
all right. More than one. Go ahead. It's all good.
Although you might think that not thinking about it will help you be more present in your leave and you'll just push it off and deal with it whenever you go back, my experience in working with people who are returning proves the contrary. People who pick maybe even just one small piece of the challenges that they need to work out before they go back and tackle them every day gives them a much better sense of accomplishment, calm, preparedness, and then allows them to be more present with their baby throughout the rest of the day rather than spending the day worrying about that return. The second thing I'll say, I have 2 more things I want to say. One is baby firsts only happen when you see them. And I want to just offer that as a reassuring mantra. People worry, oh my gosh, I didn't see him. What if I don't see my baby do XYZ for the first time? It's because I went back to work and I'm such a horrible parent. You run this awful dialogue through your head. And you can tell your caregiver not to tell you, or they may already have a policy of not telling you when those baby firsts happen. Our son learned to clap age, whatever, 7, 8 months. He came home. He was clapping at the dining room table. We were taking a video of him. We're so excited. Oh my gosh, he knows how to clap. We're calling the grandparents, the whole shebang. And then we walked into childcare the next day to his daycare and we said, he learned how to clap. And they said, we know, but they didn't tell us. And it did not diminish my joy. So your baby could learn how to do whatever it is that the babies learn how to do in the crib at night or in front of grandma or while you're in the bathroom. It's not because you went back to work that you didn't see it. So like, let's take that guilt piece away. Then the last thing that I found super reassuring in going back was to remember the anthropological research of Sarah Blaffer-Hrdy. I don't know if you ever read Bridget Schulte's book, Overwhelmed, Work, Love, and Play When No One Has the Time. It is a wonderful, wonderful book. She interviews this evolutionary anthropologist named Sarah Blaffer-Hrdy, who studied ancient women, like, thousands of years ago. I think it might have been in Kalahari Desert that she was focused on. And she found that it wasn't that the women were the sole caretakers of the babies. The women went off and they did all sorts of things and they left their babies back at camp. And the village took care of the baby. And she called the rest of the people who were caring for the baby allo parents. And what she's saying is it is a very normal human thing for people who are not just the mother to take care of baby. And, if you put it in the context of human evolution, what's not normal is having one person care for a child. What is normal is, having a village. And what's not normal is not providing support for new moms. And so it helped me decrease my guilt a lot in that going back and return process to know that like allo parents, my daycare teachers were a normal part of human history.
Yeah. I mean, that expression, it takes a village, didn't come from nowhere.
Exactly.
There's a source.
So you'll get this, you'll do this. You're not abandoning your kid. You're going back to work and they're going to love you and they're going to run into your arms. And there is no one like mama. I mean, that's probably the last thing I should say on the advice to that person who's looking at the red date. Like, they're not going to lose their attachment to you just because you went off to work for the day. Like, it was the best part of my day going to daycare to pick up my toddler, right? Who would like run screaming into my arms. And, you can't have that joy of the screaming into the arms if you haven't had a little separation. So you'll be fine is what I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. All good advice. All right. My final question before we head over to our lightning round here is what about those who choose not to return? I imagine that decision is not taken lightly for many. Do you have any thoughts or advice for moms in those shoes to help them make that decision with more ease?
Yeah. I think first of all the skills that you're gaining through parenthood, you're gaining through parenthood, right? And so they're going to be there for you if you decide at some point that you want to come back. And we all have ages and stages that we do different things. The community that I work with on a daily basis is people who have made the decision to go back. And so I'm not in touch as much with what's going on for people who have decided to quote unquote step out for a while. But I think COVID has proven to us that, we can take time to do the things that really matter to us, and then we can go back later. And there are returnship programs. And I mean, there are arguments to be made in favor of not taking breaks, and not that it's a break to stay with your child from the professional world and not, but I'd say parenthood highlights for us what our values are, and we need to trust those values and run with them, because that's how we're going to live a full and human and happy life. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Well, on that note, we are going to transition over, like I said, to our lightning round. These are some random, just for fun type questions, just so our listeners can get to know you a little bit more personally. All right, here we go. What book are you reading right now?
I have a book problem, Marissa. I treat books sort of like I'm in college and I have to have the whole backpack full because there's one for each class, except the classes are all like the different areas of my life. So you had sent me the list of questions, and so I thought that I would go around the house and gather up the books that I'm reading. And
oh my God.
I started this strategy that I really love of putting like the novel that I'm in the middle of on the dining room table, so that when I'm at the table and I happen to be alone for 5 minutes, I have a choice right in front of me between my phone and the book. And it just gives me this alternative. So the novel I'm reading that I just got up from my kitchen table is Time After Time by Lisa Grunwald. I love it, love it, love it. It's a wonderful love story that takes place in Grand Central Station in the 20s and 30s and 40s. It's beautiful. I work with a yoga teacher, and she and I read one chapter at a time together. Bringing yoga to life that's what's on that. Donna Farhi, I'm working on that. Really love it. Creative visualization, visualizing different, things for success. This is my pre-bedtime reading. My husband and I read 1 or 2 pages of a book together at night before we turn off our computers and stuff. And right now we're reading Being Present by Janine Turner, professor at Georgetown. I got 2 more. I'm in the middle of 6. Somebody's Daughter, a memoir, Ashley C. Ford, which I learned about from the We Can Do Hard Things podcast. And then because I have 2 boys and they're becoming adolescents, and that's really a thing to get my head around because I didn't have any brothers and I have no idea how this all works. Decoding Boys by Kara Natterson. Really, really wonderful book. So those are the classes in life that I'm taking right now.
Thank you for being so uber prepared for that question. I love it. Usually I'll ask and people will be like, oh, what's the name? I love it. Thank you.
So yes, I'm always in the middle of somewhere between usually 4 and 7 books.
All right. Amazing. Mm-hmm. I like diversify, just like Yes. Okay. Would you call yourself an introvert or an extrovert?
I would go with Dan Pink and put the word ambivert in between those two. I lean toward introversion, and I'm very happy working from home and derive calm from being by myself, which I think actually most people do. Even extroverts still derive some sense of calm from being alone. But I do think I'm in the middle. I love people and I get overwhelmed by large groups. So ambivert.
Okay. Yeah. What if you could only eat one food for the rest of your life? What would it be? Calories don't count.
Ben & Jerry's Chubby Hubby.
Yes. It's good choice.
Peanut butter filled chocolate covered pretzels inside the ice cream. Amazing.
Yeah. That sounds amazing. Yeah. What's one app you can't live without?
Oh gosh, that one. What is I'm like looking at my phone. What is an app that I can't live without? LinkedIn. My LinkedIn app is probably where I go the most often.
Yeah,
just
you use
to
most
be able
often.
To connect with people. Yeah.
Yeah. Finally, do you have a guilty pleasure TV show?
Yeah, I am desperately waiting for the next season of The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel to come out, which I truly loved in the first couple of seasons. My husband and I also have been enjoying Schitt's Creek and, of course, SCHITTS. I'm not swearing on your podcast, although I suspect that would be okay. And my kids and I, if you're looking for something family friendly to binge watch, we've been really enjoying The World According to Jeff Goldblum, which is on Disney Plus, and I think it's made for Nat Geo. He picks different topics like birthday cakes and sneakers and coffee. And he does a whole episode on the evolution of that thing and why we're mesmerized with it. And it's just really awesome.
Oh, that sounds awesome. My kids love documentary kind of stuff. So that would be fun. They
would probably get a kick out of it then. Highly recommend. We've been watching it as a family, sort of binge watching it.
Awesome. All right, Lori. Well, I want to thank you so much for being here. Before we wrap up, please tell our listeners where they can find you.
Thank you, Marissa. You can find me at www.mindfulreturn.com is our website, and you can look around and find all of our courses there. We're on all the usual social media channels, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, at Mindful Return. And I co-host the Parents at Work podcast that you can find over on Apple Podcasts. And I co-host it with my husband, who's a career coach, and we try to always bring in, dad perspectives too. I think those are probably the most likely places. You can also find my book, Back to Work After Baby, over on Amazon.
Well, thank you again, Lori, for being here. Such great information, great tips. I know our listeners are going to gain a ton of value from this conversation.
Thank you so much, Marissa. It's been a pleasure having the conversation with you. And thank you for helping me think about my guilty pleasures and what I would like to eat nonstop.
You're welcome. You've been listening to the Mama Work It podcast. I hope you've enjoyed this episode and would love if you could take a quick minute to leave me a review on whichever platform you're listening from, and maybe even send a note to a fellow mama friend recommending it. Reviews and recs help this podcast grow and reach more like-minded, awesome moms. And if you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click that button so we can stay in touch, girl. By the way, if you haven't checked out the Mama Work It website, please do. There are lots of free resources and great articles there that can help you with the juggle of work life, mom life, wife life, fill in the blank life. So head on over. Thanks again for being part of the tribe. I'll see you soon, but in the meantime, keep on working it, mama.